talking to Democratic Congressional and Senate candidates. Cynthia, how do you respond to the fact that voters are feeling economically insecure and you're campaigning to go to Washington and help change that? At the same time, Republicans' message about the source of that that economic insecurity is very straightforward. It's Barack Obama. What is your message to them?
My message is that the Republicans are wrong. It's not Barack Obama that's obstructing the ability for Americans to get jobs. It's the extremists in the Republican Party who've made it their life's work to prevent any success on the part of the president and Democrats. And so what I tell voters is there are these packages up on the shelf, bills waiting to be passed that could provide a veterans job corps, that could provide tax fairness, that could help the refinancing of homes, that could build infrastructure projects. These things are just waiting to happen, but we need the votes. And so they need to send people like me, people like the fine candidates at this table, so that the president can have the support in the Congress he needs to move the country forward.
Do people know about those bills? I mean, I feel like do people know when you tell a voter there's a thing called the American Jobs Act that would do X, Y, and Z. What is the response? I mean, do they know in your district that exists?
Well, people may not know the specifics, but what they do know is that this Republican leadership in the House of Representatives and that Tea Party conference has blocked the ability of the president and the American people to move forward in a productive way. Now, notwithstanding the tremendous obstructionism that we've seen, that's evident to the people on the ground that I talk to day after day after day, what we've been pointing out is that progress, notwithstanding the obstructionism, has been made, that 4.3 million private sector jobs have been created under this administration, that the automobile industry in Detroit was saved to the good of the country, that we have seen foreclosure rates, at a 4-year low. So progress has been made, notwithstanding the obstructionism, but of course more needs to be done. The president inherited a tremendous train wreck of catastrophic proportions. The only way to get it back on track is to make sure that we send people who are committed to doing the business of the people. The Democratic Party is that.
Yeah. One of the things that I found interesting in my district is that people are concerned about public sector job loss as much as they are private sector job loss. And they see Republicans very much part of that problem. Because what's happened is that you look at school districts in my district. I have Elmira, the city of Elmira. It's only a city of 30,000 people, 200 job losses in just teachers alone. And that's hurting these communities, and it's hurting people across this entire district. And so, when we're losing those public sector jobs, we're losing middle class jobs. And that's a huge problem. And I think people see Republicans at fault for that.
If you're talking about obstruction, if that's part of the case, Kirsten, I'm curious because you are in a district that is, if I'm not mistaken, a new district, and my understanding of its political dimensions is that it's a real 50-50 kind of district, and you're one of the number 2 ranked swing districts in terms of how close the electorate is. Can you, in that environment, when you just said to me, we need to send people who want to solve problems and not bicker, can you simultaneously say, I'm going to work to solve problems, and there's this implacable, nihilistic, obstructionist party on the other side that will do nothing, will stop at nothing to destroy the Democratic Party?
Well, Chris, I just served 7 years in the Arizona State Legislature. Really, if I can manage that, I can certainly handle Congress. The truth is that there are opportunities to work across the aisle. The problem that we faced in Congress is that there are so many extremists who are just like my new Tea Party opponent, who are more interested in partisan gridlock than in finding shared solutions. Chris, I've got an opponent who wants to eliminate the Department of Education, right? No Pell Grants, no student loans, no funding for K-12 schools. It's hard to find common ground with those individuals. But I believe that you can always find a way to reach across the aisle and solve some problems. What we need is a Congress that has folks on both sides of the aisle that are willing to do just that.
Rob.
Yeah, Chris, I was a small business owner. I was somebody who employed 45 people providing excellent wages and benefits. And I can tell you that there's not this overregulation of small businesses that people on the Republican side like to talk about. My businesses were located in the northern suburbs of Chicago, and in one of the states they call a nanny state for being overregulated and try to demonize it. But I had a lot of success. The greatest impediment I found to my business was not having a holistic solution to the healthcare crisis our nation faced. And the Republicans' response to addressing that was to do nothing. Now we have a president who gets in and passes the ACA. And this is going to do a lot to help people get started in business.
How does the Affordable Care Act play in your district? Do you talk about it much? What do you hear from voters about it?
Well, it comes up quite a bit because, with Paul Ryan having written this Kill Medicare budget, I think the solution is Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. And that's how we get the small business of entrepreneurship going again. That's how we support our small businesses, by making an environment where they're not worried about having to pay horrendous amounts in health insurance costs or not have the kind of protection for their family that they need for fear of bankruptcy.
Do we have a Medicare for all consensus at the table? Are we
I'm
for all, Medicare for all?
Certainly the case. And I think,
wow, okay.
I think the Affordable Care Act and its passage fits into this broader thematic war that's playing out with progress for the many, which I think everyone around the table is articulating, and prosperity for the few. And the notion is that you have these entitlement programs that have been successful, Medicare, Social Security, that are under intense attack by the Republican Party, by Mitt Romney, by Paul Ryan, by the extremists on the right, that really threaten, the capacity for average, ordinary, everyday Americans to move forward. And that really is the stakes of this election, and I think that the more that we can emphasize that in our own districts and across the country, the better we'll be in November.
I think it's even more than...
The Affordable Care Act, you asked about how it plays out in the various races. In Maine, the first thing that our Tea Party governor did when the Supreme Court announced that the Affordable Care Act was constitutional, but the Medicaid the waiver issue might be out there, was try to throw people off of health insurance, like 27,000 people. It's just, so the Affordable Care Act comes up over and over again when you're in a state that's being governed by Tea Parties, because their goal is to take as many people off of health care as possible. And so it's a great opportunity for progressives and Democrats to talk about it.
We've now heard the word Tea Party, the phrase Tea Party 15 times, which suggests something about the polling on that phrase. I want to talk about the era of big money and super PACs and how that's playing in your races. We're hearing a lot about it at the top right after this.